Hey everybody, welcome and thanks so much for joining us. On today's episode of conventioNOT, Ryan and I sit down and chat with Neel Agrawal. Neel is a percussionist, he is a researcher, he is a law historian. To be honest, Neel's got a bunch of titles. I have to say that my most favorite is the one he so poignantly provided himself. He's the liver of life. Neel and I go back to our Michigan State days, but it's been a long, long time. I recently came across his name on an album cover of one of my favorite artists, and it reminded me of my good friend Neel. Our conversation today is, as always, pretty wide-ranging. Also, as always, I can't say how blessed and just graced I feel to have spent this time with Neel catching up. So I have to just do this right away because, like I said, I have so much I'm so excited to get into.
Yeah.
And I want to introduce you, but we always prefer to let our guests introduce themselves, not just to show how little we prepare, but to actually give you the opportunity to define yourself as you wish. So just real quick, today on conventioNOT, we got Neel Agrawal with us. Neel, introduce yourself, sir.
Hey, Mikey, Ryan, nice to be with you. Thanks for having me today. So yeah, I'm Neel, and I live in Los Angeles, California, and I'm a percussionist and a researcher and just a lover of life, an enthusiast. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Beautiful. You said percussionist. I was like, yeah, we're all perfectionists, Neel, but what's that got to do with today?
There's no percussion without precision.
I like that. That's good.
And maybe perfection.
So hopefully just a real quick background. I know Neel from Michigan State. Ryan was at Michigan State at the same time as the two of us. Neel and I met very much through kind of randomness. We went on a study abroad. We're from very different worlds, pretty different even academic backgrounds. And we kind of hit it off. We'll get into that a little bit, but to be honest, we could spend hours getting into that. And we're probably going to spend a lot more time today focusing on your journey. I know that was probably just a smidgen of it. I'd rather get more into you than us.
A little bit of a back and forth, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I was sharing with Ryan, admittedly, kind of how we met, but it gave me such a limited understanding of, I see where you are today, and I know you're, teaching, right? Essentially, I mean, you're a working musician, but I see you're also doing a lot of kind of teaching and instruction, academic research, like you said. But man, dude, I met you, we went to the Caribbean on a study abroad. It was all about what? Political science, I had no idea your background and just kind of your dedication to music and how long you've been doing it for. And so that's the main reason why we brought you on today, Neel, just to kind of show that perseverance and obviously show off your personality and things like that. And, hopefully rip you out of your shell a little bit, but not too much.
Feel free to pry, whatever you'd like to do. But yeah, I think that was a pretty good kind of overview. Mikey and I met in the Caribbean when we were at Michigan State, and we did hit it off. I mean, we became like such good friends, and we were like family over there too.
Yeah,
and that means a lot to me, especially when you look back at your times. And so we had a great crew over there too that we were hanging with, and I think we learned a lot. I learned a lot just by hanging with Mikey too, about life, about traveling, exploring, humility, respect, all sorts of good stuff, And so, I still remember all of that.
Man, we had fun. We had a lot of fun. I remember knowing, this kid's from Okemos. There was a couple of you guys, right, that had kind of come from. So just to give our audience a little bit of info, Okemos is almost like the sister city of East Lansing, where Michigan State is, right? Like it's right there. So I feel like there's a strong contingent. How many kids from your high school you think went to East Lansing or Michigan State?
Yeah, probably per year, about 100, maybe a little bit more than 100 per year from Oak.
Maybe not most of them, but a lot.
Yeah,
that's a chunk, right? I mean, yeah, Ryan is, to clarify, Ryan's from Monroe. I don't know if you know where Monroe is, but you know, a little bit further away from MSU than I was, in kind of suburban Detroit area. But yeah, Ryan and I met at State probably just a couple of years before you and I did, and yeah, needless to say, I'm really curious to share it, Neel. Like, I want to help people appreciate how, and bear with me here, because, you know, at my high school, I didn't know that like kids did stuff after high school band. I didn't, and like, I don't mean to say that as like a put down or anything like that. And maybe my high school's band wasn't that impressive, but like, can you explain to me a little bit, like how the hell, I mean, where does it all originate from? I know that's a huge, grand question, but
yeah,
you know, you've been playing drums since you were a toddler, or, I mean, when did you?
Yeah. So yeah, I think where it all comes from that's a good question. I think any artist or any creative person, you know, needs to sort of address that and at some point. But I started actually music when I was about 8 years old. As well, I'm actually born and raised in East Lansing, so it's got a great community of musicians and artists. And so my parents got me started on music really young. I actually started off with violin, like a lot of good little Indian kids.
Is that all right? Well, I mean, educate me. Like, seriously, is that a common thing?
Yeah, I think Western classical music is a common thing for Indian people in the U.S., like playing violin, viola, cello, piano. Yeah, and it was great. I mean, what a great background you can develop playing the violin, you know, both melodically and rhythmically. So that was good. And then I did that for a few years. And then in middle school, I got into percussion, and, you know, the rest is history. I just got so into it. I was practicing all the time and made some great friends doing that. And we had moved to Okemos at that point in middle school. And the fine arts program in Okemos is, you know, second to none, really.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, it's a really well-to-do suburb of Lansing. And so they really pushed the fine arts over there. And so it really became, you know, one of my main areas of focus. And obviously band, but, you know, I was like any other, you know, kid growing up in the suburbs. You know, I was listening to Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all those cool rock bands. And so I got really into drum set, and then, yeah, marching band, drumline in high school, and just got more and more into it. And then the more I got into it, the more I saw that Michigan State had an incredible marching band and a drumline. It's actually, you know, regarded as one of the top, you know, 4 or 5 drum lines in the country, nationally. And so it became like a really big goal of mine in high school to make the drum line at Michigan State. So I auditioned and made it, and we were practicing about 40 hours a week in college. So it just got more and more serious. Shit. Yeah.
Whoa. That's all right. Ryan, you better chime in here, because I got like eight things in my head that I want to follow up with.
I come from one of those high schools where there was a really good marching band.
Which high school?
It was Monroe Jefferson.
Oh yeah, okay.
You know, and so I remember, I don't know how that falls in like the rankings of like that perspective, but I for sure remember, and I kind of like grew up around a high school that had the band and the football that went together. Like a good teams on both. And I think that like your high school environment had that too, right? And so I get that part like a little bit, but I had no idea that it was such a 40-hour commitment for a college kid, which both I'm sure develops your skill set, especially when you like are in young adulthood. But that's like quite a commitment, I think, also as an engineering student, which is like probably the other half of what you were doing, right? Or were you guys engineers?
Yeah,
did you go to engineering school together as well?
Mikey was.
Mikey
just
was
me.
okay.
Yeah, that's why I said it's randomness. He's a poli-sci guy, and I was an engineer. Okay. I just happened to hop on their ship that was headed down to the Caribbean, basically.
Yeah, you were one of the few people that weren't in the James Madison College. The program was through James Madison College, which is the residential college in public policy and liberal arts. And they ran an incredible program, and that's where we met. But it was a lot to balance. There were some engineering students and science students in the drumline as well, and I always wondered how they did it, because that is a really rigorous education.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. Is it was it a scholarship type thing, if you don't mind me asking, or are some of those kids on scholarship for that type of commitment?
Incentive?
Very few, actually. I got one my senior year because I was actually the captain of Michigan State's drumline in my senior year.
Okay.
And so they gave me a bit of a scholarship, not a full scholarship by any means, but a bit of some funding.
A little stipend here.
Gotcha. Yeah. But I think everyone's doing it for the love. I mean, because it's such a fun activity. You're so intimate, you're intimately involved in the campus environment when you're in the marching band. Michigan State's marching band has, I think, between 300 and 350 people in it. And so it's large. I'm sure you've all seen them play at the football games.
Sure. How many people of that 350? How many are at the drum line?
The drum line's about 40.
Okay. I mean, still pretty big. I didn't even realize it was, but I mean, it's got to, right? That's really carrying
it's carrying the sound.
That's the thing.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Well, and for anybody who either fashions college football or has, been fortunate enough to come to a big college football game, not that the marching band is just football from that perspective, but it really does change. And it is the part of the sport that, almost every American has some sort of feeling about, I guess, a couple weeks after the Super Bowl, so to speak. So, man.
And I was getting to play with some of the best drummers around, and it was just such a privilege and an honor to do that. And, we were practicing a lot. It was a lot of commitment for actually playing in the games as well. And, I don't know if you remember, but on a game day, if there's a noon start time, then you might be able to hear the drumline practicing around 6 or 6:30 next to Sparty. That's when the drumline reports for practice. And then, of course, throughout the week, we have multiple practices, marching band practices and drumline practices, and then your own independent work too, because we learn a new halftime show every week. So you're learning a whole new drill, all the steps around the field, and then plus the music that accompanies that. And you're playing some really hardcore beats too. I mean, the drumline instructor, John Weber, is, one of the best in the business.
Really?
Has a PhD in percussion, and just learning all of that repertoire just really got my chops to a certain level. And I didn't want to give it up. I think a lot of people just say, drumline's my, what I'm doing for the rest of my life. As far as, my association with music, but I wanted to keep evolving. And I think that's going to be a big theme here in our conversation is I want to talk about my drive to keep evolving and changing and growing as a person and as a musician.
I think you just made your own segue, Neel.
Yeah, no. Well, before we talk about change and evolving, I got to go back to 8-year-old Neel, because I'm just sharing my own ignorance here, right? I grew up in a very, very, Caucasian, Catholic, Christian-based community. So diversity was not something I grew up around in my immediate community. And in other words, what I'm saying is there were no Indian kids at my high school.
I remember you telling me that back in the day.
I think there was one girl that was probably of I don't even, to be honest, I'm not sure, some type of Asian descent, but she was adopted. And her last name she had an Irish last name. So I'm just illustrating, I came from white bread town. So you was talking about, this is pretty common in Indian culture to grow up. I mean, I see that in movies and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, Indian American culture, I should say.
Okay, yeah, because that's exactly what I was going to ask you about. Because when I think of a little kid kind of growing up in that discipline, I go towards little Asian kids.
Yeah,
again,
totally.
I think that's just through movies, but I didn't realize that it was a common, American Indian. So when you were a little kid, all the other little Indian kids that you knew, like you guys were all just bitching about having to take music lessons? Like, I'm serious. I'm just totally curious.
To a certain degree, yeah. I mean, not everyone was involved in the fine arts, but yeah, a lot of us were. And yeah, I think it was a lot of pressure to put on a kid to learn, how to read music and learn classical like etudes and studies and things like that. But yeah, it was tough. I think that's part of the reason why I shifted to percussion, because it was just a lot more enjoyable at a certain point.
That's exactly, I was hoping you would hone in on that. Like, do you remember when it went from a crappy thing you had to do after school to like, I'm going to go in my bedroom and do this for fun? Like, do you have any sort of like that moment where you really fell in love? Nice. Share if you want.
It was a bit stressful, I think, like playing violin and, trying to be an overachieving kid on that level. But then, once you start enjoying practice, it becomes a totally different thing. And I remember our band director telling us that, like, at a certain point, you're going to enjoy your practice, and you have to fill out your practice card. I practiced, 30 minutes a day or 45 minutes a day. I remember just practicing, like putting like an hour or 2 hours per day on there. And I just fell in love with it. And we had a lot of fun too. I mean, that's what's great about drums and percussion, is that it's so widely applicable. Like, you can be doing orchestral stuff, you can be doing rock music. There's just so much.
There was no limit, right? Like, you got into percussion and it was just like all those barriers of, when I think of violin, I just don't get excited. I just think about it needing to be perfect and everyone real buttoned up. And then you start talking about percussion and it's just like, no, man, the world is now completely open and there's no ceiling on what I can do with this. Especially like you said, when you're all of a sudden you're like, no, I'm not doing this for my parents anymore. Like, now this is my hobby now. This is my hobby.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think even with violin, I mean, now that I'm, more in the field and everything here, you do see that people are doing some pretty hip stuff with, classical music as well, right? There's like hip hop violin and Indian classical music. There's, great violinists, including my mentor, who I'll probably bring up a few times here, but he's one of the great Indian violinists. Yeah.
Do they still teach kids violin the same way or in a similar way to where, I mean, like, it's a social implication kind of part of it that you outlined, but like, is the training for classical music as a youth still like old school, so to speak?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. Like the method is called Suzuki. Have you heard of that before? The Suzuki method? Mm-hmm. That's the method that's taught, and you go through these books and you learn some incredible pieces, all these canons and things like that. And like my nieces are doing that. And I think it's still the same training. When I'm teaching students now, though, because we have our music school, I'm still teaching them, from sheet music.
Okay, sure.
Right here.
But the foundation hasn't changed, right?
I mean, it's nice to have a little bit of an old school approach too, I think, that foundational approach to music,
No, I get that. I get that for sure.
So
can we leap forward now?
Please.
I can't help it. I'm just
I love it. Please.
ADD with curiosity. So I took you to 8 years old, and now you're like, now I want you to get to the end of college, and you're in the drum line, your senior year, you're the man, like, you're the captain. You've worked your way up. Now you probably have more shit and responsibilities than you really signed up for. What's next? Like, I don't understand how you parlay that into a job. And I know that sounds really offensive.
No, it's true.
I know when I was finishing up my undergrad, I was like, I'm useless. Like, I'm not going to be able to get hired anywhere.
Well, yeah. And I think, because I'm doing so many different things, I didn't think like, okay, I need to graduate from college and I need to be a drummer or a musician for my job. And I didn't. I went to law school. I went to Michigan State Law School and got my Juris Doctor, JD over there. And during that time, I got really into Indian percussion. I had growing up, I had gotten into it a bit, but I met my teacher there, Navjot Sandhu, who was doing his master's in music composition at Michigan State. And he was an incredible Indian percussionist as well. And so I just started studying from him and again, just opened up my doors, so much to a different approach to music and to drumming.
So you met him completely independent of being in the band. You met him like after, and like, again, correct me here, but after, when you're in the drum line, like, is that kind of follow you through your 4 years, and then after your 4 years, kind of you're gone? Like, so you went back to school to go to law school. Is that the Eli Broad? Is that the law
Eli
school?
Broad, that's the business school. The law school is the College of Law. Yeah, it was the Detroit College of Law, and now it's just the College of Law. Michigan State
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're just going to school at this point. You know, you got a couple years, and you meet this person?
Yeah, I met him then. Actually, I met him at the end of undergrad, I should say, because I was done with drumline and I wanted to keep studying and getting better. And the drumline instructor obviously knew who he was. They had worked together because they're both in the music school together in the department. And so he introduced me. And I picked up so much from him. And he's such a cool guy. End of undergrad was a bit challenging, I think, because we were all thinking, like, what are we going to be doing next in our lives? I knew I wanted to keep doing music to some degree, but I had such a big focus on just the humanities, social justice. I really thought that I was going to become a civil rights lawyer and advocate. That's why I went to law school. And then you don't have to do drumline for 4 years. You can do it, be in the band for as long as you're in it and you keep auditioning and making it.
Oh, really? Okay. See, I wasn't sure if it was like athletes. You know what I mean? Like they only have so many years, and then they have to move on. You can't.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really do it in grad school. I mean, there might be one or two people who do it, but you do it mostly in undergrad. They had one spot open in undergrad, and I got that spot on playing the tenors, the quads, which are like those 6 drums laid out flat.
Yeah.
So that was a big moment for me, and it was a big platform too. And I just worked my way up, and
What's up, y'all? It's Mike from the show. Are you one of those people that just hits play, listens, and then moves on to the next thing? It's totally cool, because I'm one of those people too. But through this podcast, I've really grown to appreciate that all those reviews, those thumbs up, those comments, those stars, even the nastiness, it actually helps. It helps a lot. So don't be shy. Don't be scared. We've been called bad names before. Please comment, review, share the episodes if you don't hate them. What I'm getting at is feedback is essential to our program, and it's a big reason why Ryan and I do this. Not forcing you, just saying. It's out there. Hit that button. Thanks, y'all.
But I always had a broad approach. Like, there's some people who do drum corps in the summers, and that, it becomes their life. In the summertime, I wanted to do different things, and that's why I went to the Caribbean, and that's where we met. I really wanted to just have a broad approach.
So when was that in your academic career? Was that like your final year, or
what, the Caribbean?
Yeah.
No, I think that was actually between our was it sophomore and junior year, or junior and senior year?
Okay. That makes sense. I honestly, I think I want to say it was like 2004, 2005, somewhere in then.
Yes. It was between our, sophomore and junior year. Yeah.
I think that's like usually about the time where they encourage the kids to like go on study abroad too, right? It's like mid-career. It's spread out for everybody.
Yeah, but exactly.
Yeah. And Michigan State, I mean, is a global school. I mean, that's one of its sort of foundations.
Study abroad program. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, we're a global school. I mean, we're an international school. That's why I grew up, living in Lansing and East Lansing and Okemos, is because my parents came from India, and MSU was one of the main destinations spots for people to get their graduate degrees at, internationally. Wow. Okay. And still is. I mean, it's still one of the top 10 or 15 international destinations. And so the study abroad program, I know at one point it was the #1 study abroad program for all public schools, meaning that they send a lot of people internationally. Yeah. And so what a cool claim to fame, and what an awesome opportunity it is to like go to the Caribbean to study.
Yeah, we got credits. We got credits for that, bro. Like we just had to go to class and participate and you know, some papers and whatever at the end. But I mean, Neel, to like be very, very honest with you, man, like I had, like I said earlier, I didn't know that you had this at that point, dude. You had put a career into music. You had put your 10,000 hours into music already. But dude, you were so passionate. Like what you just said about civil rights and civil liberties and going into law, there was a no-brainer to me. Like I honestly, I told Ryan yesterday, I was like, when I knew Neel, I didn't even know he like was into music because I thought he was like at the top of his class at James Madison because I sat in a classroom with you and 25 of your peers and no, man, I'm not, you know me, I'm not trying to grease your wheels, but like I sat there and I watched how you would orate to the room and like how you and the teachers would have conversations and others were trying to pick up, others were trying to catch up, man. Like I learned so much from being down there, man. We go down to the West Indies and we're having some, like, we didn't have those kind of conversations in engineering classes, you know, nothing delicate was ever talked about, right? Like we didn't talk about race. We didn't talk about oppression. Like we didn't talk about any of those things. And then suddenly we're on a flight into Guyana and they tell us, hey, y'all, just so you know, when you land, the Caucasian population is going to spike. So just be wary. Just be wary of where you are, what you're doing. And like, it was just like, oh, this to me, no greater possible education than exposure and experience, right? Like, oh, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you don't get those certain conversations in engineering school and, you know, science programs, hard sciences. But yeah, we talked a lot about some really sensitive issues. I mean, the program was actually focused on literature and politics of the Caribbean. So we were reading like these incredible novelists who came out of the Caribbean, and we were learning about like the political divides between you know, the different parties and the different cultures there. One other thing that just totally blew my mind there was that half of so we went to Trinidad and Tobago, we went to Guyana, and we were briefly in Barbados. What really surprised me there was that half the population of both Trinidad and Guyana is Indian, like my type of Indian. Like we're in the Caribbean and half the people are Indian there, 50%.
I didn't
yeah, you didn't know that. I didn't know that going in. I mean, I knew sort of. But when we think of like the Indian diaspora, you know, you think of maybe Indian people in the UK or Canada or the US or South Africa, like Gandhi lived in South Africa for a while. You don't think of a lot of times Indian people in the Caribbean. And when slavery was abolished in the mid 1800s, the British Empire they couldn't take people from Africa any longer and take them to the Caribbean. So they started this indentured servitude from India, and that's how so many Indian people ended up in the Caribbean. So now you've got like this sort of distinct like sort of identity of Indian people there, but it's also mixed as well. Like everybody's eating roti and Indian food over there because of it's such a beautiful culture.
That was my first exposure to a lot of Indian things. I never thought in Trinidad would be like, there were neighborhoods where it wasn't black, it wasn't white, it was a West Indian neighborhood. Yeah, West Indian. I mean, it very much so, and it didn't take
not Christopher Columbus West Indian.
Yeah,
actually West Indian, right?
Actual Western Indian people.
Yeah,
yeah, incredible. And then of course the music. One of the important styles of music there is called chutney music, you know, which is a mixture of Indian music. Of course, they've got soca and calypso and so much over there. Steel pan music, those huge pan yards with those steel pan bands playing, right?
I remember we went one night. Remember there was like that like in-ground auditorium type thing, and that was one of the first times where I was like, Neel seems to be following this much better than the rest of us.
No, that was awesome.
But I didn't know. I thought that was just something else you were on point about. I didn't realize oh man, give that dude give him a couple, what are the
sticks? Yeah, those mallets.
Yes. Let him go play on that. But yeah, dude, we just got exposed to so much, and it was it's such a beautiful experience. I'll never forget, man. I'll never forget that.
Same here.
I gotta ask, all right. So this is a serious segue, because it kind of I took it to 8 years old and then middle, and then we'll get into some details by all means. But I want to share with how I got to smack on the back of the head to reach out to my old buddy Neel. We had just got a record player, and I ordered one of my favorite band's albums that I love, Strange Trails, Lord Huron. And I knew a little bit that Lord Huron was kind of from Michigan, that they're named after one of the Great Lakes, but I never really gave it that much thought. I get the record, I'm playing it, I'm looking through it because it's just one of those more elaborate records, the cover art, and there's a few booklets and whatnot. And I see your name as one of the musicians, not in the smallest, weirdest place in the liner notes. No, right in the middle. There's the 4 dudes from the band that I've heard of. And then the 5th dude is this guy that I went on a study abroad with. And I was just what the hell? So, Neel, can you share a little bit about how, you're such a humble dude. You've talked about teaching. You've talked about being on the drum line. Can you share a little bit about being a famous musician? How that comes about?
Well, yeah, so that was awesome that you made that connection. You hit me up. And clearly, in my soul, I was still connected with you. It's not we were done with the program and I forgot. I reflected on that time and specifically you, because you were someone that we were dude, this dude knows what's up. So that was a big part of my journey, and those times we had. But when you reached out, I was just super happy to hear from you and grateful. It was through the Lord Huron album. So we all went to high school together at Okemos High School. So by that I mean the lead singer, Ben Schneider, the drummer, Mark Berry, the guitarist, Tom Renault, and then the bass player, Miguel, went to a nearby high school called Eaton Rapids.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, and the ones that went to Okemos, the 3 guys in the band who went to Okemos, we all graduated in the same year too. And so we were like brothers in high school. We would hang out. We would have lunch, in the lunchroom every day. We would hang out.
Were they a band in high school? Did they do shows in high school, or were they just kind of?
Yep. Not as Lord Huron, but in different iterations. Yes. Yeah. They've been playing together since probably 6th or 7th grade, in different iterations. They had, Razor Dave and other groups that they had.
Different name, same dudes, different
all
names.
The names.
Yeah, basically. They had a few other guys in the band too, but yeah, they've just been playing. And the lead singer, Ben, he started the band. But yeah, in high school, he was in the orchestra. He actually played the stand-up bass, the one that you stand up and play.
Really?
Yeah. And then Tom Renault, the guitarist, was in choir, but he was also a great guitarist already at that point. And then Mark Berry was a drummer, and he and I just came up playing drums together just obsessively, and we're just such good friends, the 2 of us and a few others, obviously. But Okemos had such a great tradition in percussion and drums. And Mark's father was the band director too of Okemos, which is a huge position. That's a serious gig.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah. This is just so foreign to me. None of these things existed in my high school. There was a band or 2 here or there, but it's not the pedigree of folks that you're talking about, where it's just no, everyone in Okemos was in some way, shape, or form I thought it was just a bunch of farm boys that played football, man. But you know, shows how limited my scope was.
No, it's big time. The high school orchestra at Okemos is so serious that at that point, every year or every other year, they were doing full-on tours of Germany. So the whole orchestra would go to Germany and do full tours. And then when in the band, we went to the British Isles, and we did a full tour of the British Isles and Scotland and all these places. And when we were in high school and we're performing orchestral music and symphonic band music, and so it's just a really big deal there. And yeah, so Mark's father, Jim Barry, was the director of the band and a huge influence on us. And he went to Michigan State as well, and was in the marching band, and was the president of the Michigan State alumni band too. The alumni come back every year and do their thing.
Nice.
So it runs deep. And when you have that sort of support and something to sort of look to, I think always like what's important is to have a vision and to look up to something, look ahead to something. Sure. And when you see these incredible drummers when you're a freshman, sophomore, and you look up to them, it gives you something to work towards. And so it just became an obsession for all of us. So we were all in high school together, and we graduated. And then actually Mark Barry, the drummer, and I became roommates at Michigan State at Case Hall. And so we lived together for 2 years there. He was in the jazz program at MSU. Again, another great program, the jazz program. They have some incredible faculty there, some of the top jazz artists in the world. So he was in that program, and I was doing the drum line. And so we would just do a lot of information sharing because those are two separate worlds. Yeah, but a lot of great information sharing, in our dorm room. And then we lived together on Center Street at MSU for a little while. And there were some other great people that lived there too, not necessarily musicians, but just awesome friends that we had. And so I ended up going to law school. Mark, the drummer, went to Nashville and then Los Angeles. The band started developing in Los Angeles, and I ended up moving out here too. And we just kept in touch, and just they invited me to start playing with them. So about 8 years ago when I moved here, one of the first shows I did was at the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles. They had a gig there for about 1,000 people. And so they asked me to play percussion with them. And then just a few months later, I played at Coachella with them both weekends. So that was like a huge moment. That was in front of, I think, about 5,000 or 7,000 people at that point.
Whoa. Cool. All right. So hold on, Neel. I mean, you've been playing, you're down on the field previously, right? But were there some kind of in between other bands where you were up on a stage playing for dozens or hundreds or thousands of people? Or was like Lord Huron, you're in kind of coming into being a part of a band in that sense?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up playing in some bands, like when I was in middle school and high school,
Okay.
Obviously grew up playing in bands. I loved rock music. I had a drum set. And so I'd come home every day and just play drums on the drum set. It was a great release. But yeah, I had some bands and played with some great musicians in high school. And then in college, it was more about being in the drum line because that's the only time I had.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then really, I played with this great musician who's still in Lansing. His name's Mike Bass. I recorded on his album. Just a really talented player. And then, so I went to law school and started studying a lot of Indian percussion then, and doing my law school. I mean, that's a grind. Law school is a crazy grind. I mean,
sure.
It's tough. But I learned a lot there, and I got to, travel to India and do internships there, and, Mexico, and do a lot, and New York, and do all sorts of fun stuff. And then after law school, I actually ended up moving to Santa Cruz, California. So I was there for 3 years.
What brought you to Santa Cruz initially?
I got a job with the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, because I wanted to do civil rights work, and they had an office out there, and I applied widely around the country because I had done so much human rights and civil rights work in law school, and I really wanted to change the world and be a radical and use my education.
Of course. You're so cynical.
You can tell.
Hey, conventioNOT listener. We're taking a break from the show, and I'm coming at you to thank you for, first of all, listening to us and taking part in this community that we built over the past couple of years. But I'm also asking you just like we always do in breaks like this, to take a second and review us on your podcast channel. It helps all kinds of things. Makes us a more popular show across the network. It also helps us understand what you might like to hear as a listener. So, however you do it, give us some stars, give us the thumbs up. You know the podcast that you're listening to. It's conventioNOT. Thanks for tuning in. Back to the show.
I think you can change the world in different ways. I don't think you have to go through those, quote unquote formal channels so much. I think that's why I'm laughing too. Yeah. So I worked at the ACLU. That was actually, I never practiced. I'm not a practicing lawyer. I have a law degree. I moved out there because I wanted to start another phase of my life. And when you're not from California or Hawaii or Atlanta, it's just like something in your mind. It's not, and it's something that you strive for, but you don't really know it until you move out there, right? Whereas if you're born here, it's a different thing. I mean, we all had to make steps to to move our lives.
Be in a big city, right? I don't know if is it just us from Michigan that the dream is. I'm not trying to hate on Michigan here. I just know that, all three of us, guarantee, grew up thinking, I'll make it when I get somewhere else. Which is
there's a part of us. Yeah, there's definitely that's a part of the culture. I think so. Yeah.
It's like I don't think people grow up in California feeling that same way.
Well, I don't want to derail conversation too much, but I think there are a few places in particularly the US that are like that. I think Harlem is like that, which is a little bit more myopic on this very localized area. I think there's a few places where and it's not just the thing I think that makes it really cool. It's not just one maybe industry or one level of creativity, but it's certainly these places where creativity is relished, I think. Right.
Yeah.
So in those places you find a music culture, a food culture. Often you find a higher education component to some regard in those areas too, which is part of what I think some and if not all to maybe pick at that social scab a little bit of America doesn't always get to realize is that that's a bit of how what they consume day after day after day is created is somehow in these little uber creative areas. Not that all of Michigan is creative, it has its own weird dynamic of the automotive creativity plus our own, dynamic of educational creativity and so on and so forth. So
yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a good point. Yeah,
talking about Lord Huron, Coachella.
Sorry.
No, it's good. I think this is such an important thing to note too. Yeah. So I started playing with I got to play at Coachella with Lord Huron. Before I moved to LA and I started playing with them a bit, I was in Santa Cruz, and that place is awesome. I mean, I don't know if you've all ever been there, but
I've only been through Santa Cruz. Yeah, I've never spent time there.
I've done, and during that time, I've done a lot of, I did a lot of soul searching, and it's the first place I really moved out for so long. I'd done traveling growing up and through school and stuff, but actually physically moving and relocating somewhere for the long term, that's a different thing. And
by yourself.
Yeah, right? By myself. I was
you
there.
moved to California. I mean, I'm sure you met people, but you were
by myself,
right? Mm-hmm. You were on your own.
Yeah, I was on my own, and I moved out there. I got the job, and it was good. It was a good platform just to sort of relocate, and it was a national ACLU office. So the ACLU has this big national office that does cases all around the country. And then they've got each state has its office, like the ACLU of Michigan or the ACLU of Nevada.
Yeah.
So this was a national office, and it was actually called the Drug Law Reform Project. So it was taking a look at the drug laws in the United States, and the premise was basically that the drug regime is basically the new Jim Crow, and it's disproportionately affecting and targeted towards people of color and poor people.
Sure.
And so there's so many drug policies that need reforming. And that was the theme of that office. So it was a really radical office, and there were some great people there. So I worked there for a few years, 3 years. and they actually had some budget issues, and so they moved the office back to the headquarters in New York City. I was a bit disenfranchised with the civil rights scene in general at that point because I felt that it was really elitist. And by that, I mean that everyone they were hiring went to Yale and Harvard Law School, et cetera. And so I thought, what's the point of this? You're trying to get rid of elitist policies in society, yet the composition of your organization is totally elitist, and it's just an extension of elitism. And I would say that to them. And I don't, and I tried really doing some, recruitment practices that I thought were a little bit more inclusive and diverse. But anyways, I just realized over that time that it really wasn't for me, that scene. So I had a law degree. I didn't want to practice, and the office was closing and moving to New York. And so I found this really cool program at University of Washington in Seattle where they train people with law degrees. You have to have a JD, but they train you how to become a law librarian. So somebody who's focuses on legal research and information. So I headed up to Seattle and I got my master's in library science up at University of Washington. And that was a really hardcore program. And it was super fun and interesting. And I got to do an internship at the United Nations Law Library at that point. And it really opened up some great doors. So I was there for a year in Seattle and had a great time there and learned a lot and worked hard. And then I was applying for jobs and I got a job here in Los Angeles because I wanted to stay in the West Coast. And so I got a job at the LA Law Library downtown here. And that's the LA County Law Library. It's the second largest public law library in the country behind Law Library of Congress in DC. And I got the job to run the foreign and international law department of Los Angeles County for their law library. And that was such a great platform too. I mean, I was in charge of about 400,000 volumes of materials. And it's one of the biggest collections of foreign and international law in the world. So you have got the laws from everywhere, from all over Africa, Asia, South America. And so for 3 years, I was there and I was counted on as being the resource for LA County for foreign and international legal research for all the different litigation and scholarship that happens with international law and foreign law. There's so much.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. That sounds like a gnarly job. Like just cool. And maybe probably not like overly, you're not getting famous doing that. You know what I mean? Like maybe not overly. The second you said library, I didn't zone out, but I was just like, man, they're hiding this dude in a library. I know he's capable, but like I can just imagine, like, bro, how old are you at this point? When you got
that job when I was like 29 or 30 years old.
Okay. So you're there for 2 or 3 years. You're in your early 30s now, man. Like there's gotta be, there's something simmering, right? Like, I mean, I can tell when you talk about law and stuff, I'm not saying like, that sounds really boring to me, but the way you talk about it, I can see your passion and like, no, man, like this is crucial. This is important, but I can't help but wonder like, how much bigger that, other side of you is getting while you're putting the suit and tie on every day and going to the library, forgive the imagery there, but.
No, I hear that. And I think people have a interesting perception about libraries. Like, yes, libraries are, what we think of them, but they're such cutting edge environments too. I mean, this is where research and exploration really happens so it's not just like a old woman, like, shushing you, like we live in an information age. We're like the information wranglers out there, we're the ones who keep developing collections of materials. There's a lot that goes into it. I mean, these are major platforms. And being in LA, it was a big platform too. I'm dealing with some of the biggest law firms in the world, the biggest law schools, practitioners. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. There was a lot of other stuff simmering at that time. And in Santa Cruz, I was so into music during that time, before I got to LA. So I got to build up a reputation there because when you back to Santa Cruz, it's such a radical place. I mean, I think it's the most radical town, not city, but town in California. It's unhinged. It's a creative,
so get into that a little bit more. Like, I mean, when you say unhinged, I'm thinking wildness, but you mean it is something for everyone? Like what?
Yeah.
I mean, that goes
wild
both
too.
ways, though, right? Like, there's a bad side of that too, right? I mean, how wild is it?
It's a wild town. I mean, the activity there is crazy. I mean, it's gorgeous. You're near San Francisco. You hear about it, and Mikey, as a surfer, you know Santa Cruz is one of the big destinations.
That's the only reason why I know. And like, yeah, no, those are badass. I mean,
Surf
that's
City.
serious. Yeah.
And then you've all seen the Santa Cruz skateboard logo that says Santa Cruz on it, right?
Of course, man.
The Lost Boys takes place there. You've got UC Santa Cruz.
Dogtown, like the whole, that's Z Boys. Like that's, I think.
Yeah, that's Santa Cruz. And then Santa Monica as well here down in SoCal. Yes, totally.
So you got there and you were just like, holy shit, this is my
whole new world.
Is everything I wanted,
everything
right?
I
like,
wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not just California. It's like, it's very, very liberal California. And I knew that sort of, and that's why I had targeted it as a place to work.
Sure.
And, you know, one of my best friends from MSU actually got into the PhD program at UC Santa Cruz. And so it was awesome that I had a great friend over there as well. Andrew Civic, just incredible philosopher and writer. So I was there and I had my beach cruiser bike and I was just biking by the ocean every day in some of the most beautiful surroundings in the world. And they got the redwoods over there. And so I was doing a lot of hikes. And then the downtown is it's thriving. I mean, there's just, it's happening. It's like I said, it's unhinged. It's an artistic community. Yeah. There's creative people everywhere. You walk down the street, you hear street musicians. You can keep walking, and you can hear a Brazilian capoeira class going on with live drumming and dancing going on. You can hear a West African class going on, music and dance and drum class going on. It's just this global village. I learned so much there.
I feel like you're talking about an ex that passed away. You know, like I'm so blown away that your drive, bro. Like, and you know, you mentioned early on. The evolution. And I think like the place you're describing right now, and because I know it's like outside my door, you know, you find it's very easy to get lost in a place like that. Like it's very easy to, holy shit, 10 years went by. I haven't done anything new, you know, like, but not for you, not for someone like you, not for someone with your upbringing, not with, and I'm putting words into your mouth here, but like not with that drive and that ambition that I feel like maybe your parents instilled in you in a very, very young age. Like you're sitting in Santa Cruz, you're in your version of utopia.
Yeah, Shangri-La. It was crazy.
And basically you got this one, you know, the job. It sounds like the job basically got you to a point where you were like, I gotta move on now. I gotta move on. Like, how did you still have that like professional? Because I can relate, man. Living on the North Shore of Hawaii, it's really easy to have fun and find people to have a beer with and like just love life, you know, be on vacation. But we're not necessarily that good at that. And by we, I mean like just certain types. Like I got to do more. I got to do more than just enjoy myself. I got to push myself. I got to challenge myself. How did you, if you can, or if you feel, like, how did can you recall like just getting to your final point in Santa Cruz, or like the writing on the wall, I guess, so to speak?
Yeah. There's a little bit to unpack here, and that's a good point. So I'm saying this because Mikey and I haven't caught up in a while, and he may know or may not, but Mikey knows that I had a twin brother and he passed away when I was there. So my brother passed away when I was in Santa Cruz.
Oh shit.
My twin. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's heavy stuff. And you can I'm just telling you as an aside, you can put this in here or you don't have to. I haven't really announced that at any point publicly. It's not on Facebook. It's not on that. People who know, they know. People who don't know, they don't know. But that blew my mind again. And I was there and it was a crazy place to be. And that just, when something like that happens to you, you can either let it destroy you or you can fuel it to be something way bigger than where you are. You can almost get special powers from something like that. And I tried channeling it as best as I could while I was healing. And so I was doing my work, and I was, into that, but I was playing in the UC Santa Cruz Percussion Ensemble, which is like contemporary avant-garde music. I was playing with rock bands out there. My friends Tate and Sayaka, I was playing with them. I was playing in the Latin American Music Ensemble at Cabrillo College, and just so many different groups. Phoenix Dr. Now, this mentor of mine, he had an ensemble there called the Junkyard Gamelan. There were so many different groups, so it was like a really busy life out there,
Sure.
So, so that, I guess that experience really just changed my life. I feel like we all have different paths, and one thing that I think we should be rallying around is loss and death. And it's something that I think we all get caught up on, like identity politics. Like, I'm this, I'm that, I believe in this, I believe in that. But one thing that can all unite us is the fact that we're going to all have to deal with loss in our lives. And that's where a lot of this sort of strength and power is coming from. Is I owe him a lot. I owe a life to him, and I have to live for him and in honor of him. And I owe that to not only him, but I owe that to my parents, and I owe that to my 2 older sisters who basically helped raise us and are like mother figures to us in that way. So yeah, that's what it is, I guess.
Thank you, Neel. I don't want you to go through any more of that than you have to, but I can't thank you enough for sharing. Off the air, I'll share some other stuff. But you sharing that right now it's incredibly valuable, like, to me on a personal level, man. And I couldn't agree with you more. Like, the realities of loss, right? Like, I don't care who you are. It doesn't, like, everyone loses. And, if anything, I can't understand how we haven't become more compassionate this past year. And by we, I mean societally. Like, people are still just as eager to disagree on things. And man, has there not ever been a time when it was so evident that nothing is guaranteed, nothing is a given? And like, and I know it, maybe to some, this just sounds kind of cheesy and soft, but I just believe in, like, let's just find something we can agree on. Like, let's just move forward with positivity. Like, even if I completely disagree with your opinions, I'm curious to hear them, and I appreciate you sharing them with me. And I just, to me, that's become a lot easier this past year, because I'm afraid there's been so much loss for everyone, and more for some than others, and I hate to say focus on it, but if you can't reflect on that and understand that, like, everyone's going through something. Everyone is. Everyone you see on the road today, everyone who pisses you off at the store, we're all experiencing loss in some way, shape, or form. So, shit, Neel, I'm at a loss after that. I feel like I put my foot in my mouth a little bit, and you very eloquently and passionately explained how you were able to, pardon the phrase, but close that chapter in your life and start a new one, right? Like, start a new one of shit. Maybe the this early 30s, and guess what? Early 30s, I was in Toronto at that time.
That's right.
It's easy to be a little bit more carefree about life, right? Like, some stuff hits you and wakes you up and kind of brings you back to, like, you're grounded, your place. And man, that's the worst kind of thing. I'm sorry, Neel. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah. And, it's tough. But the best thing I can do is to turn it around and try to help people around me. And here, I'm teaching a lot of music classes to people from, all different backgrounds and age groups. And so that's been a great outlet for me to be able to give to them. And most of them don't know about, my loss, but I hope it's pretty, sort of clear that I'm trying to go over and beyond and give them as much as I can. And that's, you start in my book, I live a life of service in that way. So I feel like if we all live like that, like in a giving economy, like I'm giving, it'll all come back to you tenfold, if you live like sort of through that approach. So that's a big takeaway of mine. Obviously I'm taking a lot too, but if you're a giver rather than a taker, I think you'll end up getting much more out of it anyways.
It's interesting that you say that, because that is one of the things that ties tribes together. And, tribes, I think at some point almost distill into either religions or cultures. And then the way that we work today is that those things get intertwined. But like tribes do observe that kind of like practice between each other. Which is that way. And if you look back into what like almost all those tribes observe, is that like in when you talk to people now, modern day, no matter what tribe they identify with, which is, maybe more available than ever before, to be able to identify with a different tribe or multiple tribes, that we all win when we give. So it's like, it's magical. I mean, it's magical. I think anybody could, and everybody should learn to be able to like work with their hurt and follow, like still remain to follow, to give. Because if you don't, like that hurt goes somewhere else, right? And like I think we all know, and like this is even a little cliche after such a deep, sharing from you, but hurt people. And it's very cliche, right? But like it's
true.
It's true. And it's really hard because of our being to escape life to like the mid-level where I think all of us sit today, beyond that early 30s point you guys are identifying. And it's hard to make it there without being hurt. You might even be able to argue that you wouldn't be a whole person if you made it this far without being hurt. So it becomes like a fork in the road, for almost every human, I think, really, to a certain extent.
And that hurt could come in different forms too. I mean, people's journeys are just so different. So that's why I don't like to say, I went through more than you, or, I've been through this. I think that we should all just rally around each other, because we all have to deal with stuff,
That's the commonality.
The benefit of the doubt. I know that's an inadequate term in this conversation, but it's just again, I know, and I don't mean to say this in a braggy way, but like it's a choice to be that person. And you need to continue making that choice. But once you make that commitment, it's not that hard. It's like it's like deciding to walk around with a smile on your face. It's easier. It's easier to smile than walk around and make sure everyone knows how important and how intense you are.
Right.
But for me, naturally, I've found I smiled for long enough to where that's my general now. I don't make that effort.
Takes practice.
And just like the giving. And I'm afraid we go through waves, we go through phases in life, and it's easy to go in and out of those phases, right? It's a lot easier to give a buck when you got 100 in your pocket. But like the saying is, right? The test of us as people is when we don't have that, and when we're struggling, and we're all struggling right now. We're all struggling at different levels, but let's generically, there's a baseline of struggle. And I know that during these struggles, I have a lot more to give than it's seemingly some other people, but that's just because it's so rewarding, man. And like you talking about teaching, Neel, like I'm really glad that you touched upon that, because that is some people become that, and some people are that.
Right.
And I love that this is, far from the final stage of your evolution, but like you talk so positively and beautifully about your mentors that you're now being talked about that same way, bro. The same way. I don't know who you're teaching, but no, man, like Neel, you're just you're just an amazing dude, man. Like I just
thank you. Both of you too.
So glad to know you, man, and so excited to reconnect with you like this, and like get an opportunity to really really reconnect.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise. And you too. I mean, like this podcast, I was looking at the different episodes and stuff. Like, what a great contribution, and it's a great way for people to become inspired and to know that they're not alone, and that in their journeys of trying to create something new, that there's a lot of other people who have charted out their own paths too.
I think we've learned so much, and this podcast has caused a lot of growth. I think we're fortunate enough to be able to have this really cool Rolodex, and even in like some of the early episodes, we talk about this Rolodex of people that we know, because we're fortunate to be able to have those relationships with that community or that tribe, and reach out and just say, hey, would you do it? But now, I mean, we reflect to each other when we talk about putting the show together, those kinds of things, and there's no question about the growth personally that being able to share this time with so many people gives us. Like it's insane. I mean, it's insane's maybe a bad word. I don't like to use that.
No, it is. I know what you mean by that.
Explosive. It's really is explosive, It's like it's unexpected.
Yeah, you've done so many episodes too. I couldn't believe it. Like all the different movers and shakers and interesting people that
it's addicting. It's addicting. Like, dude, why wouldn't I want to? I mean, I don't mind exposing myself to these sorts of like kind of heavier conversations. And this hasn't just been heavy. It's been, I've been laughing. I was almost brought to tears. And like, I am addicted. I'm addicted to people and like being able to have this. I love that you said contributing, because I just think of it as, no, this is just contributing to my entertainment. That's what I'm really here for. And I'll be honest, man. On that note, Neel, I would love to give you the opportunity, but by no means any obligation. If there was anything else you kind of wanted to touch upon, or we covered quite a bit. We were. I apologize for jumping around on you there, but I wanted to give you a chance to kind of not necessarily close us out. But is there any other kind of? We could do this for hours, but that's not fair. That's not fair to you or our viewers.
Well, I'll just give you I'll give you a quick sort of synopsis of just what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, that'd be great.
This moment. So just as far as like my hobbies goes, I play a lot of music. I play a ton of tennis as well. And I'm an avid walker. I probably walk about 3 or 4 miles a day. And you are too, right?
Oh yeah,
dude. I got it at Michigan State. I caught the bug. The campus is just unreal over there. I think it's gorgeous. I love the river. I love the trees. I love the nature. I love the buildings. And so avid
walker.
And I think it's one of the best things too. It's like it's a great therapy. It's a great way to reflect. I think the power of reflection is one of the biggest tools that we can have, and walking and reflection go side by side. And a lot of times people think like I need to go to a club to work out, which is great too, or I need to go, to go take a hike. I need to go drive somewhere. It's like, well, the entertainment's right outside your door. Just take a walk around your neighborhood, and the art is everywhere. The spirituality is everywhere. And so I'm really into that. So those are some of my hobbies. Professionally, right now I'm working for this organization called Center for Research Libraries, and it's based in Chicago in Hyde Park, and it's a consortium of the biggest research libraries in the world. And they brought me in to create an archive on South Asia, so India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. Wow. Yeah, so I run a historical archive on all the most major texts from that region of the world, generally from the 1800s through the early 1900s. And so we got 20, right now we got like 25 of the most major research libraries to fund the project, like Harvard, Yale, Berkeley, Berkeley, and Michigan State as well. It's got a great collection. So that's a project that we're doing, and I run that, and it's great. We get to I launched it last year, but it took about 3 years of building the archive. And I've digitized about almost 1 million pages of content from in the 4 years, and we put it up. It's an open archive. It's freely accessible. No subscription. Nothing's needed. And so that's a big thing that we're doing. And then I'm teaching through the Los Angeles International Music Academy. So I've got my music where I'm teaching Indian percussion and snare drum technique and world percussion and drum set, etc. And I've got a teaching gig at University of Virginia right now where I'm teaching archival and editorial sort of.
How many hours in your day, bro? Jeez.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And then finally, I got the biggest thing I'm really excited about right now is I got a fellowship to the city of LA. It's their highest award that they give any artist. It's called their Individual Artist Fellowship. And they give about 13 or 14 of those out a year. And so I got that this year. It's a huge major milestone. So I'm putting together a project for that, which I call Interscapes, which really defines sort of what I do is I'm kind of in between a lot of things. And I think I want to share the worlds in between, because too often we think of like, oh, that person's a lawyer, or that person's a doctor, or this is what they're a rock musician, but that's not what I do. I want to be a connector of the dots, and I want to be able to show the landscape of everything in between. And that's kind of what I hope to make my project about here.
You already did it.
I'm really excited.
You're gonna be successful, Neel. You're gonna be successful.
Thank you. It's every day has to.
I don't. Well, you should definitely have a job role in each time zone. Like, it's.
I mean, no, you kept going there. I was like, dude, there's no way you're doing all the apparently Neel lives in some sort of wormhole where there's way more than 24 hours in a day.
It's busy. And I just want to give one more shout out, if that's okay.
Please.
Of course.
Okay, just maybe two. Okay. One is my mentor, L. Shunker. So that's he's a violinist, and he's one of the leaders of the world music movement. In the 1970s, he started a band called Shakti, Shakti, and that was the first East-West band, Indian jazz fusion band. That was him and John McLaughlin and some great percussionists. So Shankar is my mentor, and he's brought me into his performances in Los Angeles. We performed in New York City and Madison, Wisconsin last year. When I go to India, we go do tours in India. And so he's been great. He's created this instrument called the double violin. It's got two necks on it instead of one, like a regular violin, and it's electronic. And he did the soundtracks for Passion of Christ and Last Temptation of Christ. He's all over Speaking in Tongues, Talking Heads. He's all over In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel's So he's one of the leaders in the world music movement, and so he's brought me into everything. So that's a big shout out. And then the other shout out I want to give too is my friends in Boston, Subcontinental Drift. They're an arts and community organization. Oh, cool! You got your Talking Heads album. He gets a solo on the song "Making Flippy Floppy." From the 245 mark to the 345 mark. If you go there, you'll see a really avant-garde violin solo. That's my mentor playing on that.
He's credited. He's Shankar.
Talking Heads.
Yeah, El Shankar.
Mm-hmm. On the back of the album. Dude.
Yeah. So for the fellowship that I got here in the city, he's coming from India in a few weeks. He's got some work to do in the U.S. So we're going to do the performance together at the end of March and record that. And then I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my friends in Boston, because I know they'll probably be checking this out at some point. But Subcontinental Drift, they're all artists and activists and community builders in Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it's like a South Asian arts and open mic that they do every month. And I learned a lot from them through their approach and built some great relationships. And I got to do a solo show there a few years ago called Borderlands, where I was really exploring the borders between a lot of different things: music, genre, ideology, etc.
That's your wheelhouse, man.
Yeah, so those are just a few shout outs I wanted to give.
So give us one more shout out if we want to follow you or
find you,
visit your website or Insta, Twitter, whatever your preferred platform is. Where's that?
Sure. On Facebook, you can just look me up at Neel, last name Agrawal. On Instagram, it's at neel.k, the initial K, .agrawal. And otherwise, people are welcome to email me if they want, neel.k.agrawal@gmail.com. Oh, and my website, has a contact page on that too, www.neelagrawal.com.
You don't even, when you tell people your name, you just spell it out now, huh? Like, have you met another Neel? Is that
Well, it's a common spelling in India because Neel actually means blue in Hindi. Neel means blue.
Oh, so really? Okay.
That's what my name is. Yeah, so it's common, that spelling. But yeah, just to avoid any mistakes, I thought it'd be good to spell it out. But I appreciate it today. You both are awesome, and it's great to have a conversation with you.
This is phenomenal. I so value your time, and I value the inspiration of this. And so I mean, I've kind of forgotten about our listeners by now, but I guess if somebody made it through all of this and they're curious about sticking to our show, it's something that, certainly when we have somebody like you aboard and, your people listen to our episodes, that's the way that we find our community, which is big now. And it's cool. And it's in I feel proud to have like kind of facilitated it, but the conduit is kind of like through stuff like this. And so we are at conventioNOT podcast. I think it's kind of like it's spelled. There's no unique no unique person spelling that way.
Except that word is not a real word. We made conventioNOT up, but
we made conventioNOT up.
Love it.
Yeah, sure. I have a pretty close personal friend who has a daughter named Neela, so I'm pretty familiar with like the outline. She's a super creative kid, and I think we'll love actually getting a shout out on this show, this closing this episode. So, man, I feel like we could just like keep rolling and stuff. I think we probably say goodbye here for now from conventioNOT or wherever the hell you're at listening to this. Listen to it again. Favorite this one.
Stick
to
it.
Thanks,
Thank you
Neel.
both. Thank you, everyone.
To an institute, I can't stop. I'm on top because I'm conventional.